25, verses 14 through 30. And this is a passage we know very well. We've been talking about it in Bible school. Kids know it. I remember doing this on flannel graph. Remember flannel graph? You remember flannel graph?
Yes.
We put a little blanket with the people on there. It's kind of neat. Anyway, we won't going to do that. We're going to talk about a very familiar passage. In the 14th verse. Where we got a man going on a journey, calling his servants and entrusting to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received 5 talents went at once and traveled with him, and made 5 talents more. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little, I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who also had 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he who had received 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I know you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you did not mow. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that where I reap, where I have not sowed, and gather where I have not winnowed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own in interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to him who has 10 talents. Everyone who has will more be given, and he who will be abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant in the outer darkness. There men will weep and gnash their teeth. Many times we hear this parable and we think, well, that's kind of unfair. The poor guy only got the 1. But his real problem is this. He didn't do anything with the talent. Many years ago, in my former church, probably 5 years ago, we did a stewardship drive, but we emphasized spiritual talents. We did a study on that in a large group. And we had people to list their areas of strength. It really went very well. Surprisingly, people came and said later, after that study, I didn't realize I had a talent. I believe everybody has a talent. We talk about stewardship, people usually grab one of their billfold or wallet and say, whoa, here it comes. But there's more to giving than money. There's being a good steward with everything you've been given. Now, chapter 25 of Matthew, there are 3 parables contained in that chapter. One, the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, the parable of the talents, and the parable of the sheep and the goats. And really, chapter 25, if you look at it, is a continuation of the theme of chapter 24 of Matthew, where Jesus talks about the end of time and being prepared for the coming of the Lord. In a sense, this parable I've just read, we are entrusted with what God has given us. And the master returning is, one day we will give an account for what we've done with our life. All of you, if you look back, and I'm sure you've done this, some of us have regrets rather. Have you ever said to yourself, if I knew back then what I know now, I would do things a lot differently? We've all been there. But you can't change that. You can't go back in time. Back to the Future trilogies were kind of an interesting series of movies. But the fact is, you can't go back and change anything. It doesn't happen. There are no time machines as far as I'm concerned. But Jesus does this. In the parable of talents, there's one thing that really is important. And it took me a long time to, not to figure this out, but to accept it. And that is this. Who did the talents belong to initially? Not to the people entrusted with them, but to the master. The master represents the Lord. And those people given the talents represent you and me. The point is, we are stewards and not owners. And I believe as we look at this morning, and starting with our stewardship, that really we need to get in mind, keep in the right perspective, who owns everything. I remember a sermon when the preacher said very loud and emphatically, you don't own anything. You are camping on God's property, you are breathing God's air and eating God's food. But don't we act like it's ours? Are we a society that's really into possessions? I think we are. And point one is this. We must bring it all to the Lord. Everything belongs to the Lord. When we understand the relationship between steward and master, the things we own take on a little different perspective. We look at things much different, realizing they're not ours, but we have been entrusted. And not just the things that we own, but our very bodies and the very things that we do in life. Your life, your future from this point on is really the property of the Lord. Have you thought about that? What does God want you to do? As I said earlier when I came here, when I retired, I for the first time said to myself, it's now time for me to do what I want to do.